In tonight's headlines, Kwong Wah Hospital stops short of an apology after a patient is left in unconscious state after his ventilator tube was accidentally detached. Hong Kong's total arrivals and departures last year returned to 70% of 2019 levels. And China's consumer prices tumble at their fastest pace since 2009 as fears of deflation grow.
A 51-year-old man with tuberculosis is in critical condition in Kwong Wah Hospital after a medical blunder which saw his ventilator tube disconnected for up to 45 minutes. The incident took place on Monday. The patient was admitted back in mid-December due to shortness of breath before he was transferred to the intensive care unit to treat a series of complications. He then transferred to a negative pressure ward on Monday in a conscious state. To avoid interfering with medical devices, the patient was restrained. Staff left the ward after checking his vitals at 3:55 p.m. But when they returned 45 minutes later, they found the ventilator tube detached and the man went into cardiac arrest. The man was resuscitated but remains unconscious.
初步嘅懷疑呢，事發嘅原因呢，可能係就係個病人喺
An initial probe suggested the patient's own movement had led to the tube becoming loose. Hospital Chief Executive Tang Kam-shing admitted the alarms for both the vital sign monitor and the ventilator went off at the time, but they failed to alert staff because the isolation ward was installed with double doors. The vital sign monitor of the patient was also somehow not connected to the central monitoring system at the nurse station.
At that moment, that is around 14 cases that is on the same remote monitoring system. And we found that the signal is intact for all those cases. So we didn't find a systemic error in that sense.
Tang described the incident as unfortunate, but stopped short of an apology. A committee has been set up to probe the incident. Janice Low, Cable News.
The hospital authority says it will do its best to deal with a predicted surge in patients at the accident and emergency wards during Lunar New Year. Between tomorrow and the 18th, non-urgent patients who leave the queue after paying $180 can seek a refund, unlike in the past where the fee was deemed to be forfeited. The authority said the new measure was not designed to turn away patients, but rather to give them flexibility to seek help elsewhere. 18 general outpatient clinics will remain open during Lunar New Year, up from 14 in the past. Around 8,000 quotas will be available between Saturday and next Tuesday, a 25% increase compared to normal public holidays. The authority will also step up geriatric and outreach support services at elderly homes, especially when a cold spell is around the corner.
In the OH home, usually they have some on and off minor problem. The current model is the geriatricians and also the outreach team. They will have some teleconsultations and telesupport to the OH home. Such measures proven effectively in the past that can avoid some unnecessary attendance and unnecessary admission to the hospital.
Lee expects the number of patients will peak on the 3rd and 4th days of the Year of the Dragon. He said temporary beds will be installed at inpatient wards, while more doctors will be on duty to conduct ward rounds so as to expedite the turnover of hospital beds. Janice Yu, Cable News. The Immigration Department said that total arrivals and departures last year stood at 212 million, roughly 70% of pre-pandemic levels. Hong Kong has welcomed 34 million tourists, with 80%, or almost 27 million of them coming from the mainland. Border crossings will be extending their service hours during the Lunar New Year travel peak. The department expects 7.5 million arrivals and departures in the coming 9 days. 6 million will pass through land borders, such as the Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau control points, as well as the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. travelers are told to expect border clearance to take up to 15 minutes. Meanwhile, Director of Immigration Benson Kwok has declared the government's talent entry schemes a success. Of 220,000 applications received last year, 135,000 have been approved. Around 90,000 applicants have already arrived in the city. The chief said these numbers have shown that Hong Kong is an attractive place full of opportunities. He admitted all visa applications must pass a national security risk assessment, but denied imposing a blanket ban on certain groups of people.
Not a blanket ban, but we will handle each visa or entry application in accordance with the laws and immigration policies, regardless of the occupations or particular fields of work.
Janice Yu, Cable News.
The uphill battle that Chinese officials are fighting on the economic front seems to be getting ever harder. China's consumer price index fell 0.8% year-on-year in January, the fourth consecutive monthly decline. It also widened from the 0.3% drop in December and marked the steepest fall in more than 14 years, when the world was still reeling from the effects of a financial crisis. Food prices were 5.9% down from a year ago. Pork was 17.3% cheaper and vegetables 12.7%. Core CPI, which excludes food and energy prices, was more resilient, rising 0.4%. The National Bureau of Statistics blamed the lackluster performance on a high basis of comparison. Apart from celebrating Lunar New Year in January last year, people also loosened their purse strings after all COVID restrictions were scrapped. On the other hand, China's producer price index was down 2.5% last month, in what was the 16th straight month of decline. Diminishing factory gate costs typically suggest weak demand. The flat figures added to deflationary concerns for the world's second-largest economy, which did not rebound as expected after COVID. Officials in Beijing are going all out to shore up the economy and stem a stock market rout. The reserve requirement ratio for banks was lowered on Monday, while the head of the securities regulator was sacked yesterday. Raymond Yang, Cable News.
There was a small queue outside a polling station in the Pakistani capital of Islamabad, as 128 million eligible voters are expected to cast their ballots in the country's general election. In addition to the 266 seats in the National Assembly, voters will also elect provincial representatives. If a party fails to secure 134 seats to enjoy outright majority, a coalition can still be formed to reach the threshold. One of the top contenders is former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Representing the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, the 74-year-old was ousted from power in each of his 3 terms in office. He returned to Pakistan in November, ending 4 years of self-imposed exile in Britain. Sharif's main rival is Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, the 35-year-old son of former leader Benazir Bhutto. The leader of the Pakistan People's Party was once foreign minister before the government was dissolved to pave way for the elections. Another former Prime Minister, Imran Khan, is currently in jail for multiple convictions. Both the cricketer and his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party are barred from contesting elections, although members are still running as independent candidates. Against the threat of violence, Karachi residents still came out in force to exercise their right to vote. Nearly 30 people have died in election-related violence across the country in the past 2 days. Authorities even cut off internet and phone services, saying the move was to maintain law and order. With roughly 5,000 candidates contesting for seats in the National Assembly, the situation could get chaotic when results start trickling in later today. Sachin Katvi, Cable News. Hong Kong stocks finished lower today, dragged by deflationary pressure on the mainland. The Hang Seng Index dropped 1.3% in the last full trading session of the Year of the Rabbit. The stock exchange will close at noon tomorrow, ahead of the Lunar New Year break. Alibaba tumbled 6.1% after the e-commerce giant missed fourth quarter revenue estimates. Stocks on the mainland ended the year on a slightly better note. The Shanghai Composite Index advanced 1.3% ahead of the week-long holiday starting tomorrow. But overall, the index lost 12% in the Year of the Rabbit.